This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Scott Howell.
Hello, good neighbor. I got the mad priest back there giving me my sound effect.
Yeah, I was like,
Hello,
we should be
good
hearing
neighbors.
applause. Oh, good neighbor podcast.
First time I ever heard applause, just opening it. That's pretty cool. Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today brought to you by the Friends and Neighbors Group for the Greater Chattanooga region. Of course, as the announcer already told you, my name is Scott Howell. I'm your host for today. People ask sometimes, what is the reason? What is the theme behind the Good Neighbor Podcast? Well, our theme is because we want to bring an awareness to the residents living in our community regarding locally owned businesses here in the Chattanooga area. You know, local businesses, small local business, medium-sized local businesses, they're really the backbone of our communities. If you take them away, there's not much left. So we need to rely on them. We need to support them and show them that we appreciate them. And, you know, every local small business has a story to tell. And here at the Good Neighbor Podcast, we just want to help them shout it from the rooftops, just loud and proud, and tell your story to the masses. So, you know, we got one of our good neighbors here with us today. His name is Michael Rice, a.k.a. Mad Priest, at Mad Priest Coffee Roasters. Welcome, Michael. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Absolutely, Scott. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you with us. You know, I'm really interested to hear more about your Mad Priest Coffee Roasters and your business and everything. But before we do, is there anything would you like to share with us about yourself or your family?
Myself or my family? Goodness gracious. I mean, I guess the only thing that really comes to mind, Scott, is that Chattanooga's home. Been here about 9 years. And we really invest heavily into the community, really have a lot of amazing supporters and patrons and just do a lot. So, like, it's awesome to be here and get to engage more with people because that's how we thrive. We do most of our work here locally. So
that's awesome. What brought you to Chattanooga?
You know, fresh start. Lived abroad for a few years. Things kind of ended that way. Originally from Atlanta, and just didn't want to move back to a big city. Had our second kid on the way, so we just decided let's go somewhere fresh. Didn't know anyone, barely had a job, and ended up starting a company because I couldn't find a job. So didn't really plan on this, but you know.
Well, I'm glad you chose Chattanooga for home. I'm sure all the heavy coffee drinkers out there in the world will appreciate you a whole lot. If you hadn't tried this coffee, you need to, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into talking about the Mad Priest Coffee Company. What is it y'all do? And kind of just tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people know us. We're a coffee company, but we are very integrated in the whole supply chain. So we do have a shop, you know, you can come buy coffee, but we are roasters and we are expert roasters. And so, you know, we're SCA certified roasters, so Specialty Coffee Association. We're SCA certified green buyers. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we wanted like a holistic integration where we truly are experts. A lot of times in this industry and with food and beverage, people don't fully understand the value of the education behind it. You know, you're not going to call a mechanic that you know doesn't have some sort of certification. You're not going to go to a doctor. There's all these other trades that have to have that. And this isn't really any different. You can buy a roaster and learn to roast on your own, but I think there's value behind learning from people who've been doing this 30 plus years for decades and showcasing the fact that we want to be the best at this simply because the coffee itself, the producers behind the coffee deserve that. We want to honor all the hard work because at the end of the day, it is all about them. We want the caffeine, sure, but it is all about the people at the very end of the supply chain who started it and grew it. And we want to showcase that, honor that. So we're part of not just the roasting process, but also the green buying side, you know, ensuring that there's actually ethical practices, that we're paying good farm gate prices, that there's transparency, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot that can get hidden once you start crossing barriers and oceans and logistics companies. So we want to be able to not just honor them, but also allow our consumers to learn about the fact that there's actual, you're voting with your dollars when you buy our coffee. You're actually participating in change with the producers. So,
okay, what type of change are you referring to?
I think mostly economic. The coffee supply chain has a very dark history, mostly rooted in colonialism and imperialism. There's very few countries that currently grow it that wasn't started off the backs of slaves. And so, even though a lot of that has changed in the last 100 years, at the end of the day, there's still this economic impoverishment that has taken hold because, for example, about 70% of the green coffee supply chain is controlled by 5 companies, but you
Oh,
got
wow.
25 million smallholder farmers. So just
Wow.
imagine that imbalance of all these farmers with 2 to 5 hectares of land that make barely any coffee and can't make much money. And then these big conglomerates, usually run by white people, that just kind of dictate things. And so we want to see that balance of power shift so that the people growing the coffee can actually not just put food on their table, but send their kids to school, and have the same things that we have here that we kind of take for granted. And
Yeah.
so a lot of that from an economic perspective is saying, well, let's start with what the actual cost is. What is the cost of production? Because right now we base our coffee purchasing as a whole in the industry off of an invisible C market price run in New York. Well, if that C market price dips below an actual cost of production per pound, and this farmer doesn't have any say in that, and they're getting paid per pound amount that's less than it actually costs them to produce, I think we all know basic math. You're
Oh, yeah.
losing money. And they already
Absolutely.
don't have much of it. And so we want to see that change. And it's slow, it's hard. This is an extremely big boat, but it's going to take people like, lots of roasters like us and just that intentionality. But it also is with the consumers choosing to buy coffee at companies that do things like this and buy well. So,
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's something I didn't really know. I wasn't aware of. So you're bringing awareness to the fact that there needs to be change in that industry, as many industries there needs to be change, and many have seen change.
exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
that's great. That's
Education and
awesome.
awareness. That's where it all
Yeah,
starts, just having conversations.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, tell me about your journey. How did you, when you came here, you didn't have a job, you couldn't find a job, and you decided to start a company? How did you decide to start this company and get into the coffee business?
Well, I was already in coffee. So when we lived abroad, we were living in India. And for about a year and a half, we worked in the coffee industry. I was helping a local Indian national grow his retail side of the business. And then we branched off and we were kind of trying to start our own thing for a while. The coffee industry in India at the time was blowing up. Starbucks had just planted their first shop in Delhi. So we were kind of on the cusp of something big. And I loved it. I loved it from the people perspective. It was like, I'm a communicator. I'm a people person. I love to engage. And so coffee shop just made sense as far as having a medium to do that.
Yeah.
And so then when we moved back to the States, came here, worked at the time it was Camp House, which is kind of still around, through the Mission Chattanooga, helped manage that shop for a while. But I needed more. I'm a driver, I'm a visionary, and Chattanooga is a small town. And I just was like, well, there's not a lot of opportunities for me to grow in my industry without moving somewhere. And we were already feeling settled and we love it here. So I just started my own. And since, learned so much more than I ever imagined as far as the industry goes. And we just keep evolving and shifting, and Mad Priest as a company and as a name from the beginning philosophically was rooted in this idea of empowerment and opportunity. So when we first started, the name represented this idea of hiring refugees. And part of that came from the original novel of Count of Monte Cristo, which our name is rooted in. And so it's kind of just our DNA. Like since 2016, that was a part of who we were. And though that's shifted a little bit, we still work with refugees, but now we're a lot more focused on the product and the purchasing of that product, and just a little more of a holistic approach to ensuring that all of our practices are as ethical as we can and just keep learning and growing. So
Yeah, that's amazing. When you're outside of an industry like I am, yours, a lot of times you don't realize all the moving parts. You don't realize all the things that go on, and so tell me about this actual roasting process. How do you go about making sure that your coffee is the best it can be?
the roasting, there's some new equipment that they're exploring with these days. It's pretty powerful. But at the end of the day, roasting equipment is the same technology that's been around for a long time. You have heat, and you have either a steel or cast iron drum that rotates. And part of the reason why that's important is consistency, right? Traditionally, if you go to Ethiopia, where coffee is from, coffee ceremony might be an open fire roasting ceremony, but it's on a flat pan, so you're kind of getting uneven roasting, right? And that's part of that tradition and that culture. But as far as knowing what we want to do, actually through like the caramelization and Maillard reaction process of essentially changing the chemicals of that bean, the acid and the sugar compounds, we want equal heat. And so there's a lot of chemistry involved in the coffee roasting process. So if we know that we have basic heat, we have a drum, now there's all these micro elements that go into that as far as how hot, how long that process, just like if you put sugar on a stove and you make caramel, right? It doesn't turn into caramel for a long time, and it can become just basic like sugar syrup for a while. And so it's the same thing. It's just you're basically taking all these sugar acid compounds, which by the way, coffee has the most amount of compounds than any food and drink, more than wine, anything else. It is one of the most complex food items out there. And so we're still discovering so many cool things about it. And so as far as calling ourselves roasting experts, part of that is just the experimentation, the R&D, research and development. We constantly cup our coffees, which is a process where we put our production coffees on a table. We cup them. We make sure everything turned out well, or if we want to change something. And so it's just it's a full process that we engage with versus just throwing it into a big drum and then walking away. So it's, my roaster, when they're at their roaster, they're fully focused on that process, even though it's a little automated, to make sure every little detail gets paid attention to along the way. So it's pretty intricate, to be honest.
Yeah, sounds like it. Wow. So you've been
And
in
you're
business,
like, whoa, you just buy a cup of coffee, you don't think about this stuff.
right?
You
Yeah.
think, oh, $3, that's too much. I used to pay $2. And you're like, come on, man. Like, if you even knew the reality that goes behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you're also into distribution. You told me that earlier. So a lot of your product doesn't go into just local coffee shops. It actually goes out to distributors across. Is it just North America, or where are you distributing to now?
We're mostly just in the state. We have a little bit of regional presence, mostly through Walmart.
Okay.
But yeah, we work with several grocers. We're in Publix in Tennessee. We're in Walmart. We're in a couple Whole Foods. So I think, it's a growing part of our business, but it's also one that I don't like to pay too much attention to, just from the perspective of like margins are thinner, and sometimes you can't control the quality level of how long something sits on the shelf,
Sure.
right? So it's just a different beast. And at the end of the day, where we really shine and our bread and butter is that direct to consumer in our own shop, crafting those beverages, interacting with people too, because I think that's a big part of our brand, our identity, which is like engaging with the community and with people. So
how many coffee shops do you have right now?
Just the one. Yeah.
Just one. Okay. There's plans to have more?
There's always plans. My brain's blowing up all the time. We did have a little bit of a shop here at the Roastery for a while after COVID hit. And then we used to have the coffee shop and bar downtown on Cherry Street. That was a full-blown coffee shop cocktail bar. But again, that was only a few years in the making. COVID hit. So we're just simplifying right now. So we have the one store on Broad, which will be transitioning in about 4 to 6 months to a new location. So
okay, is it going to be in the same general area, the new location?
Yeah, it'll still be downtown, but just about 4 times the size. Lots of seats, more food, more community engagement and events, things like that.
Nice. That's a good place to have a coffee shop downtown. The ones
We're
I've seen
really
are
excited.
successful.
Yeah,
very
excited.
successful. Yeah. So tell me, you said you had 2 kids when you come to Chattanooga. Had a second one on the way. Do you have, how big is your family now?
Just the 2 girls. Just the 2 girls.
Okay.
Yeah, they're my life, and my ex-wife, she's still involved in the company, and we run this thing really well. And she does kind of all the marketing and social media side of the business. So when you kind of see some of the tangibilities of the business, a lot of that will be from her end. So we're just kind of doing our thing. So
what do y'all do for fun when you're not working? What do you do for fun with your girls?
Man, I mean, it's Chattanooga, right? So we do a ton of outdoor stuff. We love getting on the river. We love climbing. We love biking. We do all the typical Chattanooga stuff, I feel like. But yeah.
it's an awesome place if you like to play outside, isn't it?
It is.
The
It is.
whole Chattanooga region. Well,
Yeah.
so when it comes down to your your business side, what would you say if there was one thing that you wish our listeners knew about, Michael Rice and the Mad Priest Coffee Roasters, the heart of the business I'm talking about? If you wish there's one thing you wish all our listeners knew, but they probably wouldn't know unless you shared it with them, and you'd like to just state it loud and proud here today on the Good Neighbor podcast, what would that be?
Loud and proud. If I had one thing to share, it's this, Scott. It's that we live in a society which has valued and honored the wealthy. And if we continue down this path of voting with our dollars by buying from companies that all funnel up to the top, the opportunity of the American dream and truly to have financial freedom and to live a life that you want will be impossible. And I think the economic inequality in this country is getting continually bigger and bigger. And one of the best ways to combat that is spending our money at places like local businesses and places that are doing good work. Sometimes it's good work locally. Sometimes it's good work outside as well. Sometimes it's give back programs. But our money is what speaks. Our money is what allows us to see change. And we have that ability, but it takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of emotional energy. And so I think I want to speak for a lot of small businesses to say, like, when you buy something as minor as chocolate, buy specific chocolate. When you buy certain groceries, buy locally, buy from farmers. I know it's more expensive, but I think at the end of the day, if we learn to balance what we're buying and how, we can see more opportunities for us and for future generations, which is sometimes hard to keep in our minds because it's not as present, but it's really, really important. And that goes as far as things like biodiversity and how we care about the land and what we eat. So my biggest thing is just like, buy good, research, spend time educating yourself. I get that it takes time, but sometimes we just fall into that trap of kind of mindless entertainment and stuff. And I do it too. It's not a judgment. I do it too, but
yeah, I totally agree. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is in support of local owned businesses, and it is hard sometimes, on the weekends, a lot of family owned stores, close, and hey, I don't blame them. I would too. You need to spend time with family. You need to rest. And sometimes you may need something. You have to go somewhere to buy something maybe, that's not local, but when we can, like you said, be intentional to shop local, to try to support the local business. I found out there's a farm in Charleston that I can buy meat, directly from the farm. And, I didn't know about it till the other day, so there's a lot of places. There's a lot of places I'm sure I don't even know of yet that I'm still trying to discover, that we can buy from and support local owned businesses. So, man,
it's the best. That's why I appreciate what you're doing. Well, I was just saying, that's why I appreciate what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, internet, social media, these are powerful resources that can be used for good. And a lot of that to me is a matter of education. So something that maybe we didn't have access to understanding before, So I think the more we can just keep engaging with that, engaging with our neighbor, not being afraid of what looks different.
Yeah.
There's so much that can be done.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many people I've met that straight from a 16-year-old that bakes cookies in her house and sells them to businesses and anybody that wants them. But she does all her marketing on Instagram. I've interviewed her up to lawyers that are local, and doctors that are local, and they all need the same support. They need people supporting them. And it's amazing to have met you today and have heard your story. And I want to give you an opportunity, Michael, to tell people how they can reach out, whether online or offline, how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, for sure. So our website's madpriestcoffee.com. We are on Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff at Mad Priest Coffee. And then our retail store, if you're local or downtown or past through downtown, is just on Broad Street, right at 20th and Broad. So either check out the website, come by the shop, and then keep an eye out for the new store too, because it's going to be really beautiful and we're really excited about that. So So hope to see people kind of trickle in either in store or online. And all my information's online as well. So I'm always happy to engage with people who have questions, thoughts. We get a lot of questions on things like organic coffees or metals in the ground, and those are all things that we invest our time learning so that we can give that information, education. So people can reach out anytime and ask questions. So.
Hey, Michael, one more question. Do y'all sell your coffee direct to the public?
Yeah. So our retail store has all of our bags, and online sells everything as well. So
cool. That's nice to know. Hey, great. Hey, great meeting you, man. Thanks for being on the podcast with us today. We really enjoyed it.
Of course, Scott. I appreciate the time and had a good time.
Thank you, sir. To all the good neighbors of the greater Chattanooga region, after meeting Michael and AKA Mad Priest and learning more about Mad Priest Coffee Roasters, I know he hopes you'll take a moment to consider all he has to offer and his message today about, shop local, buy local, be intentional, support people in the community. Because, if you think about it, long before the corporate giants got here, the people who supported us were the local businesses. And we need to remember and support them now as well. Because, we do live in a day when more and more people are kind of getting walked on by corporate giants. And I'm not fighting anybody. They employ local people too. I get it. But if we can shop local and support local and direct for our money where we want it to go, the better off we'll be, no doubt about it. So thanks again, Mike, for being on the program. And thank all you listeners for taking time out of your day to be with us and, taking time to listen to the Good Neighbor podcast as well. And always remember, as the whole theme of my programs always try to be, always remember to support locally owned and operated businesses and do our best, from Jasper to Benton, from Cleveland to Dalton. All our local communities and local businesses are important. Again, my name is Scott Howell, and I'm with the Friends and Neighbors Group. Everyone go out and make this a remarkable day.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpcleveland.com. That's gnpcleveland.com or call 423-380-1984.